During this year, I had the privilege to attend many cybersecurity trainings and many cybersecurity competitions, which was related to application security and web application penetration testing. One of the interesting things that I observed during this year is there is many vendors and many websites that started to deliver hands-on training based on simulated labs that is much similar to real life. One of these companies and one of these websites was Kontra and Secure Code Warrior, which I used both of them in order to gain a lot of knowledge and a lot of skills that will help me in my day-to-day operation. Today, Kontra, which is one of the web application and application security training providers based on hands-on experience, published a real-life scenario for the exploitation of Log4j vulnerability, which has a great booming during the last days, and many people are speaking about it. You can use this scenario and this lab in order to gain more insights about how actual hacker and how actual threat actor can benefit from the Log4j vulnerability and use it to exploit any web application. We are speaking here about web application specifically because web applications are the most service that has wider attack surface. When we are talking about the attack surface, we mean here that there are a lot of web applications that are publicly available and anyone can reach it and anyone can exploit it. Of course, Log4j as a logging library can be used with many other applications, but specifically why we are concerned about web applications, because web applications can be reached from anywhere. So, in order to have access to the simulated labs that provided by Kontra, all what you have to do is open the link that I will put in the description, and you will be redirected to a page. This page is step-by-step series of step-by-step that describing how actual hacker or actual threat actor can use the exploitation of the Log4j vulnerability in order to gain access to your system. As a kind reminder, don't forget that the only mitigation in order to patch yourself or in order to close this vulnerability is either upgrade your Log4j instance to version 2.17.0 or disable the lookup feature, which is the main factor that caused this vulnerability. And by going through this lab, you will understand how actual hacker can use this vulnerability. So let's go quickly and let's dive deeper in the Log4j vulnerability by going through this lab. So what will I do now is inspect this code. As you can see here, this is just a web application code that is relying on Log4j library as a logging library. So as you can see here, if you click next, you will be asked to review a code. So what we are doing here now is we are reviewing a code of fictional website. In this website, if I hit on analyze the code, it will tell me that the developer of this website, which is called Alex, created an API. This API is getting the information about user subscription from the newsletter activity. So here we have like a website, and in this website we have a form. This form is collecting user emails when they input it, and these emails after then will be used to send notification email on the newsletters that provided by this website. So as you can see here, after I hit analyze, it kind of made a circle and a notification on specific line in code, and it is describing to you what does this code do in actual. So when you click next again, it will say tell you that pay attention that logged info, and then when we open the bracket, it has an input that is provided by user. So basically the input from user will be inputted in this variable, which is called email. Then you can click next and it will ask you to go through to the next step. So as the next step, it is asking you to do kind of subscription to this site. And in this page specifically, we are speaking here about users unsubscribing from the newsletter. So what we can do, it is instructing you here to copy this email address and then paste this email address in the at the unsubscription page and click submit. What you are doing and what you are seeing in the bottom level of the screen, you have a kind of logging for the activities that are working and performed on the actual web application. So we have here a log with the severity level of info, and this log telling you that user has unsubscribed, and instead of putting the word mail, it catched the info that had been provided by the user and wrote the email name of Alice at live.com. So we will do a kind of analyze the output, and it will here tell me what I just said earlier, and it will tell me that the information that provided by the user in unsubscribe form has been provided in the unsubscribe and in the log file. So what was written here is actually what is appeared on my screen. So when I finish the analyzing of information, I will click next, and then it will go in a much level of details. It will ask you and will give you a lot of knowledge about the lookup feature that is provided by the Log4j library. As we know, the Log4j lookup feature is supported in Log4j version 2. So if you are running on Log4j version 1, you are not basically vulnerable to this vulnerability. However, it's recommended to upgrade to the latest supported release from Apache, which is version 2.17.0. Because even though your running version, if you are running version 1, is not vulnerable, but you are subject to many other security vulnerabilities, and you don't have the leisure of having security patches from Apache no more. So here it is discussing the lookup function, and it is telling you that if you add a $sign and open two curly brackets, if you wrote inside this curly bracket java.version, if you entered this code, specifically this code here in the unsubscribe email address, and click submitted, you will get the version number of Java. This is called a lookup, and the Log4j is treating any element that provided after $sign and inside a curly bracket to a lookup. So it basically do a lookup for it. From a security person perspective, if you have web application firewall, or if you have simple input validation, you can easily deny any user to input $sign in this field. So if you have already a web application firewall or a secure code practice from beginning to validate what our users are inputting in your forms that are available on the internet, you may have a great level of security. So input validation is very crucial step, and it can save you from such problem. So however, we assume that your web application doesn't subject to any kind of input validation, so the $sign is accepted. Personally speaking, when I create a form using HTML or PHP, for example, I create a specific allowed list of characters. So I, by default, accept the alphabetic letters. I also accept numbers. I also accept @ and meta characters. Not all meta characters should be accepted. What I mean by meta characters is such as @. Let's see, I cannot type anything here. I cannot type anything here, unfortunately. So let me show you something. The meta character which I mean is @ percentage and ** $sign. All of these are called meta characters. What our users really want to use in your web form is actually @_ and dot, which are used when you write any email address. So this is the meta characters that you can allow in your web form, but all of these meta characters, especially this one, need to be very carefully filtered to only allow this kind of meta characters. So, however, it is now here describing you what is the lookup function. Then click next. It will tell you that then you can put any input inside the curly bracket after the $sign, which will cause the lookup feature. So in this example, it is asking you that to do a lookup to $sign curly bracket JNDI, which is related to LDAP lookup, ldap.google/blah. So this is a fake URL. So it is just asking me to provide this input in the unsubscribe page and click submit. So as you can see here, it already performed a kind of lookup to google.com.blah, but it found that this connection is not working because no URL and no directory is working to this URL. So in case this URL was working fine, rest assured that if you have ingress internet filtering, or let's say if you have a web filtering and controlled web filtering for your servers when they reach internet, you have a great deal of security when it comes to Log4j and any other vulnerability. In a matter of illustration and in another word, what we are speaking here is that as we understood about Log4j vulnerability, we trigger a kind of JNDI request, and in this JNDI request we asking the library and vulnerable server to do a lookup. When we do lookup, we are trying to query a remote server. This server may be hosted on the internet. So if you are controlling the internet access for the vulnerable server, you can have a control for which websites this server will be able to reach. So if you have a kind of filtering that use dynamic categories and prevent the access to, example, hacking and malicious websites, you will have a great deal of security as well. So as we can see here, the cause and the purpose for this task was related to how we can insert a custom data and send this data to our vulnerable Log4j server, and as the lookup is enabled, the Java server or the Log4j will try to initiate a connection, an LDAP connection to the URL that I just provided. So when we hit analyze output, you will find a step-by-step illustration for what was doing and what was happening with this configuration. So you can click next again, and then you will need to read what is appearing here carefully, and according to what you read, you will understand specifically what does this logs means. So as we can see here, it's telling me that after putting the data on log info, this method will invoke whatever data is provided within it. So we will click next again, and then we will click next one more time. So here we are actually doing the exploitation. It is here describing you that if you managed to do a kind of hosting a malicious code, and this malicious code or the malicious jar file, we can do any sort of bad activity or bad actions inside this malicious jar file. For example, we can deploy a ransomware. We can instruct the vulnerable server to try to download kind of ransomware from internet and encrypt the data found on this server. We can also run a simple bash command. This bash command, for example, this command specifically do a recursive formatting or a recursive deleting of all directories found on this server. So we are here, we will hit analyze, and it will describe to you what should this command and what should this order will do to the server. So it is describing you that this malicious jar file is doing a bad action. What is the bad action that is doing is deleting all directories found on this server. So it is very intuitive and very amazing to use this website to understand in a step-by-step manner what is the code, what is involved, and how to analyze the code by yourself. As a cybersecurity guy, you are not needed to be excellent in programming, but at least you need to be able to decipher the code, to understand what is this code about. So the next step here, we will click next, and then it will asking me that we can do the exploitation by hosting this jar file on our server or on a malicious server, and this server will be instructed to called by our malicious or let's say by our vulnerable Log4j server. So instead of creating a new server and host the malicious jar file on it, there is a simple tool that is available online on GitHub, and this tool is specifically used in exploiting the JNDI instances. So this tool, if you have a Kali Linux, you can download it from GitHub, and in order to operate this tool, all what you have to do is to copy this script which is written here and based on your attacking machine. So the shell or the terminal that I am currently working in is emulating and simulating the attacking machine, not the original web server that we was talking about earlier. So once I hit enter, I will run the exploitation tool of the JNDI, and it will describe to you what is the data included in this command in step-by-step manner. So in order to illustrate it in much of detail, what we can see here is that it is running through Java, so it is a jar file, and this is the name or the file of the exploitation. We have then a command that will be configured, and this command is directing to our external server or our attacking machine server. So this is our attacking machine server, and this is the listening board. So in order to gain more information about this command, you can navigate by step-by-step guide on this tool, the Kontra tool, and it will describe to you what is the standard output and standard input and what does this command telling you exactly. So what we can see here is that my server now, or my attacking machine now, is hosting an LDAP service on this IP address on this port, and after then we have the malicious payload, which is Z40E1KS. So this is the malicious payload, and in this malicious payload I can get this data exactly and get this from the curly bracket and type this URL with the malicious payload on the attacking web server, so on the attacked server. So I can simply what we are doing right now is we are doing a kind of reverse shell on our attacking machine. So in order to make my server listening to attacks or listening to communication performed by the vulnerable server, I will open a Netcat on my server and click enter. Netcat simply is an open source tool, and this tool allows you to open or conduct what is called a reverse shell attack. You can use Netcat for many good reasons and many good usage and benign usage, but for the most of cases, Netcat can be used to do kind of reverse shell. You host something on your server or on your attack machine, so and you need other people to contact you on this particular port. So Netcat can help you in this matter, and you, of course, again, you can do a check for this task by yourself to understand in a step-by-step manner what does it do exactly. So we will hit next. Now what we are going to do is, as I said, we initiated the JNDI exploitation tool on my attacking machine, and then I opened a Netcat. I opened the port on my server. And in the JNDI attacking or the JNDI exploitation, I started a kind of a server on my machine, a fake LDAP or a malicious LDAP server, and this server has a malicious payload. All what I have to do, I will take the URL, or let's say the full address for the malicious LDAP server with the specific path or the specific file that will initiate the vulnerability, and will enter it between the two curly brackets after $sign, and then I will click copy and enter this data instead of my mail address. Again, if I have a kind of input validation on my web forms, I may have a great deal of security, but we don't here have any kind of input validation. If you have just an input validation that validates the $sign and deny it from being entered on your web form, you will have a good security level. But again, it is all about the security of code. So we will click submit. What we can see here now that is I am now have an access, or I have a reverse shell to this machine. What we did here, we have the web server here, and we have the my attacking machine. On my attacking machine, I was already opening port 1337, and once I entered the data, I instructed the Log4j vulnerable server to communicate with this port and conduct a reverse shell. So what I have here now, I will notice that the username changed from pub to root at the server name. So if I click ID here now, I will see that I have access to using the root user on the server. Pay attention that this server is the Linux server that is hosting this website on above of it. So using Log4j vulnerability, I am not only able to inject remote code execution and inject a malicious jar file, do harmful activity. I can also have full control of the server using the user account that controlling this web server. So we now have a shell access to this server, which ideally mean I can do anything. I can do directory listing, data leak, data exfiltration. I can do anything. I can even use this machine for what is called the lateral movement. Lateral movement means that I can do this machine as a base station to initiate my upcoming attacks on this server. So we will click next. And then it should be the finish of the lab. It is telling you that you have to upgrade your Apache Log4j instance to version 2.16.0. But as we said before, we have to upgrade to version 2.17.0 because Apache found a new vulnerability in version 2.16.0. This vulnerability is not as much severe as the original vulnerabilities that cause remote code execution, but is a vulnerability that cause a denial of service attack. So it is recommended to upgrade your Log4j to version 2.17.0. But again, I hope that during this video, I illustrated some of key aspects that you need also to consider. For example, the factor of input validation, which is a responsibility for the coder, the programmer that created the front end from the beginning. If they apply a kind of input validation, you will have a great level of security in this thing. Also, if you have a kind of web filtering, you have a control for what your internal servers can reach on the internet, you will have a good level of security. On my channel, I will discuss all these steps and all these recommendations and guidelines, but I wanted really to share this lab with you. This lab is very amazing and it will save your time. And even you are not a developer, this lab provides you with clear step-by-step illustration for how to benefit from this vulnerability. And because as much as you understand what is the vulnerability, how can it be used, you can dedicate a serious effort to solving and patching this vulnerability. So that was all for this video. I hope it was informative, and really I encourage you to subscribe with the newsletter of Kontra. After clicking next at last time, you will be able to input your email address to receive information and security news and offers, of course, from Kontra, because Kontra is basically a paid service, and it is targeting companies and software development team. So if you are a the security guy in your company, don't forget that the awareness is key factor in order to build a secure system. So awareness is not just for the end users and regular computer users, it is also important for IT people and developers. And the security starts from the developing. So if you have a developer that put a security aspects in his mind, he will develop a secure code from the beginning. And developing secure code will help you along the way to mitigate such serious vulnerabilities. So thank you so much for viewing and have a great day.